One of the things that sort of gave us the idea for this presentation was that we were noticing there's a lot of investors walking away from anything that wasn't turnkey. And the reality was that the properties that aren't turnkey are the ones that you actually make money on. And so what we want to do is so let's talk about what are our learning points that we're trying to hit in this. So first, let's talk about this. So keep in mind, this is to help you out. I am not going to tell you how to buy your own property. I'm not going to tell you, all the legal stuff. This is all suggestions. At the end of the day, you really should use a real estate licensee or agent in the state of Washington. And, when things get complicated, never hesitate to bring in an attorney. And I am not an attorney, so I am not going to talk about local laws. Okay, so what are our goals in this presentation? I want to kind of de-HGTV everyone's concept of this. I think HGTV, well, it's ultimately entertainment, but I talked to a lot of beginner landlords that have taken on some of that HGTV brain. So we're gonna knock that out of your noodle today. We're gonna hit some of the noob mistakes, the people that are brand new to this stuff that I see them tripping over a lot. I want you to come away from this being able to see the potential in a property, not what it is today. I need you. It takes a while to develop, but you'll start to see what can this property be, not what it is today. We're going to talk about what are the things that are really gnarly that you're probably going to see, and more importantly, of those gnarly things in a distressed property, what are the stuff that you should walk away from, and what are the things that are very surmountable? What are the things that are easily fixed? So you can have an objective analysis of that property, and we're going to talk about why turnkey properties are generally negative cash flow. Now, we'll talk in a second why just because it's negative cash flow doesn't mean it's bad, but we'll dive deep into that. Okay, so we need to set the stage. Unicorns do not exist. Okay, you are not going to buy a property. This is a slide we covered on the last time. You're not going to buy a property with zero money. Oh, and it's also move-in ready. Oh, and also, but I want to live in one of the units for free. But also I'm going to have a property manager do all the hard stuff, and the contractor will do all the repairs, and I'll never pay a dime because my tenants are always paying. Oh, and also I want cash flow. Everything about this has trade-offs. Now, maybe do those things occasionally happen? Sure. Do maybe unicorns exist? I'm just telling you, I've never seen one. Okay. And lastly, let's talk about some of the terms. Now, I'm not going to deep dive into this, but I want you to be at least somewhat familiar with some of the terms we may use. Okay, so OPM, other people's money. So we're going to use the bank's money to buy the property, the tenant's money to build equity and cash flow. The future buyer's money is going to be our appreciation. And then the taxes is not saying that someone's going to pay us tax money, is we're going to get tax breaks because we're doing what the government wants us to do, which is provide housing. So the four simple terms, these I want you to memorize. CATE, Kate, your new best friend. Cash flow, that's the money left over. Appreciation, think of that as like the protection against inflation. Okay, that's the property value going up measured in dollars. Taxes, those are the taxes that you're not going to pay to Uncle Sam. And then equity is the difference between what you paid and what you now owe. And then the last one that is also kind of a side benefit is the time you free up through passive investment as opposed to a full-time job. Okay, so why do I like distressed properties? And I personally have bought multiple distressed properties. I just recently purchased one. Cassandra and I are rehabbing it right now. It was actually, the funny thing is, the more experience we get, the worse distressed properties you'll get comfortable with. So you're going to start out with stuff that just has bad paint and funny smells, and now we're moving on to properties that have been heroin dens for 5 years. So why do we like distressed properties? Because I have seen and I have purchased properties that have sat on the market for sometimes over a year. And the newbie brain is going to look at that and go, oh, well, it's been sitting on the market for a year, therefore it must be bad. You, hopefully, when you come or finish with this presentation, are going to start looking at those differently and seeing the potential. And usually, I've seen my own mom walk into a house to buy and walk away because she didn't like the paint color, right? Which is why I threw this meme on there. I've seen that literally happen. That's a Saturday to change the paint color. The other cool thing is you can go in and buy the worst property in a good neighborhood and actually do good in your community by turning that property around. The distressed properties, if you buy them correctly, okay, and you pay what they're actually worth when they're distressed, can be nearly instant equity and often cash flow. Okay, I know that's the C word, the one everybody likes is cash flow. And they're also a great way to learn as you go. So distressed is a scale. You don't have to go straight into buying the former heroin den like we did just recently. You can dip your toes into levels of distressed. Okay, so first thing we want to be looking at is we want to decide what neighborhood are we looking for, okay? So, and that could include the state. What state do I want to looking for? Like personally, I like Alaska. Why do I like Alaska? Because I live here and I really, really, really know the neighborhoods. Does that mean I should only invest in Alaska? No. I really like Oklahoma City. Now, I spent a little bit of time there with the military, but I also really like that state because Oklahoma City has one of the most stable economies in the United States. So that to me is a risk trade-off. Now, I know that Oklahoma has lower cash flow. I know it has it has decent cash flow. It has kind of somewhat poor appreciation and equity building. But what am I trading off? That's a risk trade-off for me because I'm not getting the ups and downs of an oil-based economy like Alaska. Okay, or maybe you're investing in Vancouver and you say, well, I like buying in Portland, but the laws are getting a little out of hand, or I don't want to be part of the next chop, so I'm gonna move my investment to Vancouver. So first newbie thing I'm gonna break out of your brain is I have to buy where I live. Now, maybe if you're starting out, you're using FHA or VA loans, but loans that require you to live there, that may be a requirement, right? But as you get more capital and more lending at your disposal, don't necessarily think that you are trapped in just where you live. You have to learn how to hire property managers, and that's a presentation we're going to do in the future. Is how to break out of your local area. Okay,
yeah,
now
can I add to that? Sorry, it's my volume.
Go ahead.
Can I add to that? Is my volume working?
Yeah, your volume's fine.
Oh, gotcha. I wanted to elaborate that, yeah, you don't have to invest where you live. And I just kind of want to elaborate on that just for a hot second with the K thing that you talked about earlier, because there's certain towns that you invest in to get appreciation and maybe tax benefits. There's other towns that you may invest in just for cash flow. There's other towns you may invest in just for equity or taxes. Each town has a unique variable, and each property has a unique variable that will help you play the card that you want. But middle class is pretty traditional, same everywhere. So if you stay in the ladder rat community, whether it's Oklahoma, Texas, Florida, or here, it balances it back out on being able to manage it.
Exactly. Yeah. So there can be like sort of like sub economies within local areas.
Right.
So
and
when we look,
you have to just make sure it matches your goal. We were doing a consult this last week where somebody's like, all I want is cash flow. And I'm like, well, Alaska is absolutely amazing for appreciation builds and equity builds because the dollars are bigger. Whereas in some southern states like Georgia, Florida, Oklahoma, they're good on cash flow, They're horrible in tax benefits. They're horrible in appreciation and equity. So maybe we need to move you to a different place, and because we're in a franchise, we can get you connected. But yeah, you just have to make sure the goal matches your ladder rack community you're shooting for.
Mm-hmm. So what do we need when we talk about ladder rack communities? And this is a term I came up with a few years ago. And I've got this picture of a truck with a ladder rack, so y'all know what I'm talking about. Okay. When I see trucks with ladder racks in a neighborhood, this to me is like a good sign, because these are blue collar jobs. Hey, when the global pandemic happened, did everyone still have plumbing? Did everyone still have electrical? Did everyone still have cabinets? Yeah, these jobs don't go away. Laptop jobs go away. Blue collar, real world, get your hands dirty jobs, and the indicator of where those people are employed, a really common way to look for is trucks with ladder racks, or hey, he drives the company van home and there's, Daryl's Plumbing on the side of the van. Those are generally very stable blue collar neighborhoods, young families with kids. Okay, what else are we looking for? We're looking for decent schools, okay? Because guess what? If you don't look into it, when you own that property and you've sunk 50 or 100 grand into it, your tenants are going to be looking at that. And if you bought in a place, I don't care how great your granite countertops and your stainless steel are, it's still a bad school, and that's gonna hold you back. So one of the coaches taught me really early. He said, you make your money when you buy. Okay, you're going to notice a trend in these presentations. I'm not trying to teach you how to be a property manager. I'm trying to teach you how to be a better investor. Because if you come to us as a property manager with a total turd, there's a good chance we're going to turn you away, because I don't want to be the scapegoat for the bad buying decisions that I can't solve. I don't want to get stabbed in your parking lot. Okay? I've worn the bulletproof vest. I've talked to the FBI. I've worked with the police. I've cleaned up the heroin dens. Guess what? It's not very fun. And just because I'm making money doing it doesn't mean I want to do it for long. And there's just certain properties that maybe they're in a good neighborhood, but the homeowner overpaid for it. Okay, so what we're trying to do is we're trying to set you up for success, where you have a property that, regardless of the property manager you hand it to, if they're halfway competent, they can make it work because they've got a good foundation to work off of. All right, so jump in there, Cass.
Well, what I was going to say is that the type of property you end up buying, let's say ladder rack, those tenants tend to be very busy with life, busy with having a job, busy with having the kiddos, the wife, soccer games. They're busy with life. Because of that, they don't have idle hands to do damage to your place. They also care about their credit because they want to go to the next place. So depending on the type of property you buy, more lower income or to higher class, it's a different kind of group of people that may make interesting headaches that you may or may not want, versus when you go into the middle class, they're busy with life, they kind of leave you alone. So those are great things to consider when you're picking a property, because you may get into a property that needs a lot of hand holding that you don't want to hold the hands on, or you get into one where they have enough money to come after you all the time because they feel like it. Mm-hmm. Or you get into the one where they're busy with life just like you're busy with life, and that's the style you want within your property and within your portfolio. There's landlords that go and get a bunch of C properties and they're like, what am I doing? I have no time. This is crazy. I don't have enough money. I have to now pay someone to pick up tampons in front of the dumpster. And you're like, I didn't put that on the spreadsheet. Now I got to deal with who's doing it. And then I got to deal with cameras. And it's just too much for some investors, and they want a different portfolio. So then they got to go through the process of selling it all, moving it to the middle class, and starting over again with the money flow. So when you're buying the first one, think about the type of tenant you're going to deal with, and are you okay with dealing with them?
Exactly. You want tenants that have better things to do than talk to their landlord. And one of the things I like about ladder rack neighborhoods where there's rentals is most of those people are aspirational homeowners. And like, for example, we report to credit. So when the tenants aren't paying on time, that is getting reported to their credit score. Okay. People who want to buy a home, their eyes light up when I say that, because they know they're getting credit on their credit report to buy that home. Whereas the guy who isn't going to pay his rent and just wants to argue with the property manager every month, when I say I report to credit, what do you know? His application never shows up, right? Okay, so it's reasonably close to town, and employment nearby. This is important, okay? You need to ask yourself, when you're looking at a property, I don't care how good of a deal it is, you need to ask yourself, where does my tenant work? So I just recently had a property I leased. Super cute, built in the 90s, fully remodeled, in great shape, minor mechanical issues, nothing we couldn't handle. However, it was probably 30 minutes outside of the bedroom community. Now keep in mind, that's an hour and a half north of where most of the employment is. Most people are not going to drive that far to work one way. That's 3 hours of driving a day. So one of the challenges I ran into was it was fairly priced, it was in good shape, it was well marketed, it was nothing wrong with that property, but it was kind of in the middle of nowhere. And will it rent? Sure, it did eventually rent. Now, but that tenant, or excuse me, that investor had to eat multiple months of vacancy, because I don't care how good my pictures are, how good my description, how good my walkthrough video is, I can't make that drive any shorter. Okay, now last point on this slide, and then we're going to move on. This is the one thing that when you're looking at a neighborhood, I want you to ask yourself, would I live here? And more important than that, would I let my kid live here? If your kid was 17, 18, 19, moving out of the house, how comfortable would you feel about them living there? Okay. Okay, what to avoid? What are things that I'm going to tell you, if you start seeing a lot of this in a neighborhood, you probably need to walk away. Okay, this first bullet point here is that kind of, you know it when you see it. Okay, this is a picture I took in a local neighborhood here in Alaska. Okay, but every town, every city has one of these neighborhoods where you just kind of know it when you get there. That like, if you feel like you need to lock your doors, you have no business buying in, like, while you're driving. You have no business buying there. Okay, long drives to town, we just talked about that. Backed up to busy and noisy streets. One of the few things I don't like about my duplex, and I lived there for 5 years, was it backed up to a main street. And all summer long, because it was right after a stoplight and it was uphill, every Bubba in a Harley Davidson had to rip up that hill at full throttle every night. And it just got so old. Every fart can Honda, every just up the hill. So keep that in mind. Is that a total deal killer? No. But if you have a hard time getting in the parking lot, guess what? Your tenants are going to too. And even if they do rent it, they're probably not going to stay as long, because they're going to get, like, they don't want to have to take their life in their hands every time they leave the house. Okay, sketchy alleyways, boarded up vehicles, boarded up homes, vehicles that are clearly have been turned into storage units. If you're seeing, like, on a more city area, if there's a major employer leaving, okay, graffiti, another indication, bad schools, which we talked about. Okay, at the end of the day, trust your gut. If your son or daughter was saying, hey, I'm gonna go to my first year of college, and they found a rental in that neighborhood, how would you feel about it? Okay. Okay, so let's say we've picked out our state, we've picked out our neighborhood, and now we're going to start jumping on Zillow, or we're going to be working with our real estate agent, and we're going to be looking for good deals out there. Okay, now you may be really tempted to see some ads that are just really garbage ads and say, oh, I'm going to move on. Guess what? everybody else did too. Maybe be the person willing to put in the time to look at this. So these are real pictures I found online of just god awful for sale ads. Like, I mean, take this one up here. I don't know, maybe there's a time space continuum that intercepts somewhere in this kitchen. I don't know why or who knows, maybe that's the actual shape of the oven. A lot of people would look at a pink house and say, well, good grief, I don't want to live in a jar of Pepto-Bismol, right? Okay, guess what? You can paint it. Okay. This one here, where she couldn't even bother to clean the counter, let alone keep herself out of the picture. This person over here couldn't even, the bottom right picture, they couldn't even be bothered to get the camera in focus first. Okay. So yeah, it's bad and it's worth poking fun at and laughing at. But for you as an investor, you might be looking at that and going, I bet you no one else is looking at this. This thing might be a deal. And they thought they were really smart. And they negotiated down the real estate agent, or they used their sister-in-law who's sold 3 houses in the last 3 years. And, really, she really doesn't know what she's doing, but hey, she's got a license, so she must be good at it, right? And they get this bad ad that's lazy, bad pictures. Oh, I don't want to pay $500 to a real estate photographer. I'll just do it myself. FSBOs are really common with this. So, just what you're looking for is those signs of weakness in the ad that the newbies are just going to keep walking. Okay. This is the other one, and I'm going to do a whole slide on this one, is the owner's out of state or there's no property manager. Now, the owner out of state, you can actually look up in most places, you can look up the tax records. And if you see that the mailing address for the tax records is out of state, that may be an indication of an out-of-state owner. Now, maybe they have a property manager who's just on the ball and taking great care of it, right? But it's just one more clue as to, hey, maybe this is good, especially if it's self-managed. A lot of times you can find old ads of the property. And if you see really bad descriptions, bad pictures of like when they were trying to rent it, that's another indication. Hey, I bet you this guy isn't getting the rents that are possible if they actually did a good job. And he probably thinks that's negative cash flow or it's not performing the way it could. I bet you I could fix most of these problems by doing a better job.
Yeah, on the out-of-state owner, when you guys go to have your real estate make a offer and start negotiating the offer, it's actually a really nice trick to go pull up the property records to see if they do own the property, if they live here or not, because that'll tell you how out of touch they might be with their property, or how out of touch their property manager might be with the landlord. Or sometimes it's just a cheap landlord that's just running it down to the ground while they're using the tax benefits. But when you make those offers, knowing if they're in state or not is a huge advantage when you're trying to negotiate. And not all real estate agents know to look or care about that feature, because they're on autopilot pumping out the negotiations that they do. So just be sure to use that when you're making an offer, because sometimes you can squeeze some more dollars that way. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what are signs of a good deal? So let's say you've narrowed it down to a few houses, you've picked your state, you've picked your neighborhood, and now you've picked out a few properties and you're going to actually go drive them, right? Because there's stuff that's not going to show up beginning. Now, first thing to do is you want to let your mouse do the walking for you. And go do Google Maps, right? And go do a Google Maps scan through the neighborhood. You can do virtual drive arounds, especially if you're buying out of state. You can do virtual drive-throughs. If you say you're going to fly to Little Rock, Arkansas and buy some properties, you've got it narrowed down to, say half a dozen or a dozen properties. You can go do a virtual drive around the neighborhood on Google Maps and kind of see is like, do I really like this neighborhood? And maybe I'm not going to, if I've only got 3 days in Little Rock, I'm not going to waste my time on anything in this neighborhood. Okay, so what are we looking for when we actually, we're on site, we're in our car, and we're driving around. What are we looking for that might be signs of bad management, signs of bad owner, that might scream, hey, this could be a deal, right? We're looking for the things that are sort of off-putting, but hey, I could fix that pretty easy. Okay, so you can see in the pictures like trash outside. Okay, guess what? You can have that removed. You can call 1-800-GOT-JUNK and it'll be gone the next afternoon. So that's pretty easy to turn around. What I mostly look for is I want to find a pretty good neighborhood, a solid middle class, working class neighborhood, but I want to find the worst property there. If it's the worst property in that neighborhood and it's for sale, and then I find out that the owner lives out of state, man, like my mouth is watering at that point. Both my fourplex and my duplex that I bought were that way. Grass up to my knees, crazy tenants, bunch of kids' toys in the front yard, bunch of broken crayons and neglect and moss on the roof and all that kind of stuff. But I'm looking at it going, I can fix that. I can fix that. I can fix that. I can fix that. Right. What else is that? Okay. Yeah, I can fix it. But you know what else I can do? I can beat up the seller on that stuff. Go, hey, your property looks terrible. It's out of control. I got to put a bunch of work into this thing. I'm sorry, but I can't pay market for this. Okay. And we're just talking about what's outside. We haven't even gotten in there to, made the offer and gotten in there to do a home inspection yet. Okay. So really good signs of tenants that are out of control, abandoned vehicles. I can see this old Land Cruiser just begging to be restored here. Litter, mattresses, and couches. Again, all easy to solve. Call a tow company, call 1-800-GOT-JUNK or the local junk service and have all that stuff ripped out of there. You're done that afternoon. But it's a good sign that, hey, this guy may have been slapping any tenant with a heartbeat into this place. Now that's going to take a little bit longer to fix, but we'll talk more about that in a bit.
Well, we went by a fourplex the other day that had this very scenario where a lady asked us to manage the property and we did a quick drive-by on it. And it was very clear with every patio was packed full of tenant belongings. The sidewalks was packed full of tenant belongings. The cars were all full, where you park your cars, they were all full of broken down cars. So they were parking on the streets and sitting there doing a repair. One of them was doing a repair on a vehicle while they were sitting on the street. But then if you look around, the whole neighborhood was condo associations, pristine yards.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, this is the ugly duck on the block. So that's when we had to have a conversation with the owner to say, you're the bad apple on the street. You can either sell as is and drop your price, or you can let us clean it up and sell peak price. Just having good tenants that take care of a place makes the wear and tear on a property be way less to last longer as an investment for you. Anyways, I just remember driving by that and figured I'd share it.
Yep. Okay, so we've picked out a house we like. We've seen a bunch of problems. We found our ugly duckling fourplex, or whatever it may be. Worst house in a good neighborhood. Okay, we're getting ready to do the walkthrough. Let's talk about that preparation in the morning. Okay, one, I don't want your choice of footwear to determine whether or not you found that $20,000 problem. Okay, maybe we're just going through a walkthrough with the real estate agent at this point. Maybe we're doing it with the home inspector, but I want to be wearing proper footwear because I'm probably on a house that has a crawl space. I'm going in the crawl space and I'm bringing a flashlight and I want to see it, smell it, touch it. What am I looking for in the crawl space? I want it to smell dry and dusty. I want it to smell like a barn. If it smells like a cave, and everybody kind of knows that smell when they smell it, it's that moist mildew smell. That's a red flag. Doesn't mean I'm walking away yet, but it's something I'm going to make a mental note of. I'm going to make sure the home inspector takes a look at that. I'm going to bring a pen and a notepad. I'm going to take notes like, hey, crawl space kind of smelled funny. Might be a water leak in the foundation, might be a pipe leak, etc. I want to know what units are occupied. Are they all occupied? If I'm on an FHA or VA loan and I have to move into one of those units and they're all on brand new 1-year leases, it's not a deal killer, but it's going to be awfully hard for me to satisfy the requirements of my loan and move in, right? I might be paying out of pocket to get somebody to move early. Okay, who's supposed to be living there, right? Do the tenants match the neighborhood? And I'm going to be real careful in how I get into this because, but it's kind of one of those, you know it when you see it. So, um, you're looking for signs of like, do man, I swear these guys are selling drugs, right? That was that fourplex we drove by the other day. It was like, listen, I know you all are into no good. This is a nice neighborhood. I could do something pretty good for the community if I got you out of here and I get to make some money in the process. Lastly, I'm going to usually arrive about 30 minutes early at least. I'm going to park down the street and I'm going to just kind of watch the normal traffic of the neighborhood. If I see a car pull up to a house, walk inside, leave 5 minutes later, and I see that happen multiple times, I think everybody knows what's probably going on in that house. Okay. So just be observant. Just stop and look, listen, and smell, right? So, like they teach you at SEER school, sills, stop, look, listen, smell.
And I've seen a lot of investors where they'll sit there and go, how do you say this? They'll just sit there and check a box and say, okay, I bought 20 houses, woohoo. And they didn't check it, see it, understand it, feel it, or truly have a solid relationship with the team where the team can identify and be on the same page. A great example. I know someone that had bought a few properties, sight unseen, turnkey, and they didn't have a working relationship to where they explained that the street that they're buying on is in a neighborhood that's a C class and it's a B property remodel, and there's going to be a hard time trying to fill the unit. And while trying to fill the unit, they got robbed several times and had to buy some pipes for the house several times. And then it dawned on them what neighborhood that they were in. So it is possible to buy from a distance, but you want to really make sure you understand the quality of your advisors and that you're on the same page with definitions of conditions, so that way they can feel, smell, breathe on the walkthrough for you. Mm-hmm. And then for those that are in live where the property is, you definitely want to sit on the street and observe. And all the interactions you have on the street is all interactions you're going to have when you're managing the property. So then you ask yourself, do I want to deal with this? And even if I hire a PM, is a PM going to want to deal with this and do a good job because they're focused on picking up tampons at a dumpster, or they're focused on trying to make sure they're watching the market rate to raise the rents? So you have to kind of think how you want your portfolio to go, because that's how it's going to live and feel when it becomes live and in your hands.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what are we, when we're going through the place, what are we looking for that are signs of a good deal, right? This is all very curable problems. Bad smells. Okay, pet urine, really common. Smoke, really common. And yes, despair has a smell. I hate to say it, but I've been into a lot of houses, and I've called up my sales guy who worked with the homeowner, and I said, "This was a divorce, wasn't it?" He goes, "Yeah." It sounds weird, but you can smell it and see it. You can smell and see when that person's life unraveled really quickly. And I don't say that to sound predatory, but it's just like, hey, that's a good sign that like this person is just done. They're out. I just want to be done with this house. Okay. Okay, cluttered mechanical rooms. Obviously, this picture on the far left, major fire hazard because that's a boiler. But at the same time, is that curable? Yeah, literally like in an hour. That's not a big deal. Trashed and beat up hallways. It's really common in multifamily units with common hallways to see just a bunch of dog hair and candy wrappers and stuff in the hallways. It's also a really good indication of how much the property manager and the property owner care. Maybe the property manager does care, but the homeowner will never let the property manager pay to have that, cleaning company go out and clean it up. That may still be a good sign of a good deal. If the tenants are somewhat hostile, or you can kind of tell when they're neglected, because a lot of times they see a new buyer coming in and they might kind of unload on you. So be very friendly, talk to people. Okay. have you ever noticed that like a good senior cop is really good at getting people to talk to them and very friendly, and they're really good at getting them to say things that they might have not said had their guard been up. You want to be doing that. Talk to the tenants, get them to talk to you, tell you about stuff. You're also going to get an idea of which tenants that if you do buy this place, that guy probably needs to go because he's constantly bagging on the landlord, and I don't really know why. Um, Tired and beat up paint, paints that's starting to yellow, it's old. Um, just again, sills, stop, look, listen, smell. Okay. Okay, how do we spot those landlords specifically? Okay, so we're farther down in the transaction. We're starting to look at like the actual, we're getting to do our due diligence period. We're looking at leases, we're looking at things, and I've got a whole presentation I do on how to beat up sellers on this. So this is going to be a super short, truncated version of this. But what are we looking for that says like there's probably a lot of room for me to bloody this guy's nose when it comes to how they've been managing the property? So leases, I call them Google leases, but they're the ridiculously small lease that really doesn't cover a lot of bases. It leaves the landlord open to a lot of liability. I've seen a lot of ones where there is no lease, no tenant ledgers. Okay, so there's no tracking of what the tenant paid, when they paid, what was their balance after that. Move-in inspections, and you can say, oh, I don't care if there's a move-in inspection. Oh, you're going to care a lot when they move out, right? And you're going to go to your property manager and, oh, they trashed this place. I need you to take all their money. And I'm going to go, guess what? I can't, because the previous guy didn't do a move-in inspection. And what does that mean? If that tenant takes us to court and says, Your Honor, I didn't do any of this damage, and the judge is going to say, well, gee, Mr. Landlord, do you have a way to prove that none of this damage was pre-existing? Because Mr. Tenant here says it was already like this when he moved in. Well, we got no proof. Nothing. So guess what you're doing? You're writing a check. You're writing two checks. One's a small one for the full amount of the security deposit, and then you're writing a really big one to clean up the inside of that unit on your own dime.
That's something that happens a lot in real estate transactions, Eric, where they go and buy these properties and they don't stop to make sure that they have the entire paperwork on a property. And what happens is when that tenant leaves, you're writing a lot of checks because you can't prove it to charge the deposit and legally take the money. And that's a simple fix with making sure you have social, date of birth, and the move out, because then you can do collections. You can actually do judgments if you want to. You can do charges to the deposit if you want to. But also, if they don't provide a ledger, just assume the tenant isn't paying rent and they're trying to dump a bad property. That's very common too.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Special deals. Oh, well, see, this guy gets a break on rent because he mows the lawn. Okay, what happens when he mows his foot off? Who's carrying liability for that? Is he a mowing company? Did he have any type of insurance to cover that? Well, guess what? You are the insurance now. You and your homeowner's policy. Estoppel certificates. So what an estoppel certificate is let's say I own a property and I let Cassandra park her RV on my property every winter, and that way her kids have more room to play in the yard. And we have a written agreement that for 6 months of the year, Cassandra gets to park her RV because I like her little kids, and her little kids like to, have a little bit more room in their yard to play. So and Cassandra pays me $15 a month. Now, if I were to sell my property and that agreement were still in place for the coming winter, I would have to disclose that information to the seller. Say, hey, I've still got an agreement in place through the end of this winter that I rent a small space on the property for Cassandra to park her RV so the kids can play. Okay? Now, if that agreement is still in place and still in force, that just because I sold the property doesn't make that agreement go away. The lease is the same thing. And you need to listen to this part. Do not ever let a real estate agent tell you that just because the property sold that the leases are no longer valid. That is not true. There was a broker here in town who was teaching classes saying that, well, as soon as the title changes, all the leases are invalid. We checked with 3 attorneys and a judge. All 4 of them had the same answer. He's wrong. That when you sign a lease with the tenant from the beginning day of the lease to the end day of the lease, they have what's called right of peaceful enjoyment. Okay? As long as they are meeting the terms of their lease, they're taking care of the home, they're paying rent on time. They have rights to there regardless of whether you sold it. So
I could tell a story on the estoppel certificates real quick. There was a sixplex that the owner bought it, closed, and had us manage it from day one. Because we had the estoppel certificates, which said tenants just pay rent, they don't, they just pay rent, and the electric was not included. Well, what happened is the seller was trying to dump a sixplex, dump bad leases, dump a lot of bad decisions that they had on it. And when it sold, the estoppels made it to where we only had rent to collect. We didn't have to worry about the electricity. And so when we took over, we turned off the power to the entire building and told the tenants to pay their own electric bills, because the seller was trying to be nice and couldn't be firm and not pay for all the tenants' electric bills. So it was negative cash flow because they were paying everyone's electric bill. When we took over, because we had the estoppel, we could cut the power, and all the tenants had to figure out how to get power. Now, that's obviously not the best thing to do to your paying customer, but it is something that sellers will sometimes do to get rid of a bad apple, and it did hurt and have turnovers and all that stuff, and it wasn't fair. But if the leases are bad and they're all verbal, just know you're going to be walking into potential surprises, such as RV is allowed to park there.
Mm-hmm. So what do I mean when I say suspicious estoppel certificates? You will get shady real estate agents who will wink, wink, nod, nod. Hey, tenant, sign this estoppel certificate that says, I know you pay $1,000 a month, but if you could sign this here that says you pay $1,200 a month, well, guess what? They just valued the property higher because the rents are higher. Okay. And then you are signing up for looking at this, right? The lease says 1,000, the estoppel says 1,200. Now, there's a legal process, I don't want to get into right now, but that's nonetheless a problem. Now, does it mean walk away? No, but just knows that it's one more thing for you to notice that the dingbat real estate agent probably didn't notice, because they have all of 4 hours training in property management. And you can catch on to that and go, hey, this is an issue, and you can push back on the seller on price on that. Like, hey, I gotta undo a bunch of your problems here. Or maybe you can say, you need to fix this before I buy. Last thing is just a general sense of, do you get the sense that the owner has no idea what's going on? And maybe that's no idea what's going on at the property, or no idea what's going on in the city. When we bought our fourplex, the grass was up to our waists. There was trash everywhere. The roof was neglected. There were no gutters. And the tenants were happy. You know why they were unhappy? Because they were like $400 under market on rent. And so they just gotten lazy. So I don't know how much lazy is worth it to you guys, but $400 a month times 4, that's an awful lot of money to be lazy. And I'm not that rich yet, right? Let's hope someday that I can blow $1,600 just because I don't feel like dealing with something. Okay, let's talk about when to walk away. What are stuff? Now, this is most of the stuff. This is, hey, you need to trust your home inspector. Okay, now, but Eric, it's new construction. Go to timeout. Okay, you will get a home inspector. I don't care if it's new construction. Now, we're talking about distressed properties, so you're probably not buying a new construction. You need a home inspector. Do construction guys ever get in a fight with their girlfriend the night before and forget to run the ducting for the bathroom fan outside, and now it's dumping moisture into your roof, into your attic. Yes, that happens. I've seen it. Okay, so you need to use your home inspector. Trust your home inspector. Get a good home inspector, not the cheapest home inspector, the good one. Because trust me, a good home inspector will more than pay for themselves. It's like having a good accountant. Okay, a good tax accountant will more than pay for themselves. So look, when you're looking at major issues, like foundations are the big one. You want to buy a property with a whole bunch of cosmetic issues. You don't want to buy a property with a bunch of structural issues. Can they be fixed? Yes, we just did one recently. Okay, we fixed a foundation. We literally re-leveled a house. There are people who can do it. Is it cheap? Oh, no, not at all. Okay, so what are those big ticket items that we're looking at? Roof obviously depends on the size. Roofs are expensive. It's very high liability insurance for guys who do roofing because guess what? They're on top of a roof. Okay, so 6,000 to 10,000 would be like the minimum to replace a roof. Does that mean you could maybe negotiate that as part of the sale? Oh, you betcha. Not if you're using your sister-in-law who has her real estate license and has sold 3 properties in the last 3 years. Okay, but this is why having, like we talked about the last presentation, you got to have your super team. Crawl spaces and foundations. Okay, destroyed crawl spaces, I've seen them fixed. If they're caught early, they can be fixed, especially up here in earthquake country. Leaky crawl spaces that have been damaged by big earthquakes and are now letting water come in, are a big problem. Okay, if you live in an area with a lot of snow or you're buying in an area with a lot of snow, you probably shouldn't be looking to buy properties in the winter because you can't see the roof. And when you go into the crawl space and it's winter, guess what? All the water's frozen. So it's probably not penetrating the foundation that time of year. I like buying in spring. A lot of problems happen in spring. Heating systems. Are there inspection stickers all over the heating? Okay, that's a good sign. The owner is going and looking at the property. It is very, very common for us. Now we send reminder emails to homeowners. Hey, it's been a year since your heating system has been looked at. Well, I don't have the money. That's fine. But when you try to file an insurance claim, okay, the insurance is going to look at, were you doing your part? Okay, my boiler caught fire at my personal home a few months after I bought it. Okay, fortunately, saved the home, caught the fire quickly, put it out. Okay, but got to meet some firemen and all that fun stuff. It was pretty legit. So that stuff happens. You want to see that does it look like sloppy work? Are the pipes straight? Are the pipes clean? Is there a bunch of places where hard water stains? We're looking for electrolysis, which I'll talk more about in a second. Okay, you're not an HVAC guy. I'm not an HVAC guy. If you want somebody to inspect the heating system, especially on larger multifamilies that are all reliant on I've seen some heat boilers that are larger than a car. Okay, you're talking about you have to take out a wing of the building if that block cracks. So that would definitely be worth the probably less than $500 to have that sucker inspected. Environmental. In 1978, asbestos and lead-based paint were outlawed. Does that mean you should never buy a property that's pre-1978? No. Does it mean that all your repairs are going to be significantly more costly? Well, not all your repairs, but major repairs. They are going to be more costly because I just finished my EPA class a few months ago. Holy cow, what a pain in the butt. Lead-based paint. Massive pain in the butt. You have to do all this like hazmat protection, make sure the dust doesn't get in the air. What are you doing with the runoff when you wash your tools? All that stuff. So that's something to look at. This property, like, hey, when I send a contractor out there, he's going to bill me a lot more because he's got to do all this lead-based paint mitigation. And if you don't, and you think you're smart, and you're going to find the guy off Craigslist who's not going to do any of that, you might not like the fine you get when one of your tenants spends 10 minutes on Google. and finds out that you didn't do any of that. Get a good attorney.
I do want to add to your chat here, Eric, for a second, because we do have landlords that are our customers in the group. We've got some Washington and Alaska in the group. And I promise when we ask for work orders to get done for HVAC, moss on the roof, check your gutters, clean your dryer vents, I didn't make those policies and those questions come to you guys because I want to drum up money for a work order. I did it because a landlord got hurt in insurance or a lawsuit or something that caused things to be more complicated and expensive for that landlord because they didn't do something. So like we had one person who had a chimney fire out of their chimney. Insurance declined because they didn't maintain their chimney, have proof that the chimney was cleaned in the last 7 years. So the insurance company said, you didn't do your part. We had another one where the homeowner moved out of the property, let friends move in for a hot minute. Friends moved out, and then it was sitting on market to get rented, and a pipe break happened. And they said, you didn't do your part because you didn't do the right insurance policy while it sat vacant. Anyways, insurance companies are declining claims a lot lately, and it's because you didn't check the box to do some care to manage the property, whether it's smoke detectors, CO detectors, fire extinguishers. We had one where the insurance company tried to decline a kitchen fire that a tenant had because they wanted to prove that we didn't have fire extinguishers in the property for the tenant to use. Well, the good thing is that particular landlord had a move-in inspection where we check fire extinguishers sitting in that home for that use of that tenant. And because that one document, it forced the insurance company and the tenant's insurance to pay that bill. And the landlord was out $0 over the whole ordeal. So that is the reason why those emails come out. I just figured I'd share.
There's going to be a lot of stuff where a good property manager, it's going to feel like they're nagging you. No, it's because they've seen that other guy get burned and they don't want you to be the next. Does it mean you have to approve every work order? No, but like Cassandra said, that fireplace, it hadn't been done in 7 years. Okay, so we're covering our bases. We're trying to cover your bases too. Yes, at a certain point, you need to have the HVAC guy go out there and inspect the thing. You need to have the fireplace cleaned. You need to have the gutters cleaned, because insurance companies, especially right now, are really looking to get out of claims. And if they can find somewhere where you screwed up and therefore they don't have to write a $100,000 check, they're going to look for it. Okay. Underground heating oil tanks, common in more rural areas, older areas, that can get into an environmental disaster. Doesn't mean you walk away, but it is something you need to pay attention to. You need to talk to an expert in that. If there's an underground heating oil tank, do not take your real estate agent's advice on that. You need to talk to somebody who deals with environmental issues like that, because we're talking big money and the feds get involved. Lastly, septic and well. Okay, when was the well last tested? Is the water safe to drink? When was the last time it was pumped? Oh, it was pumped last year. Great. Do you have any records of that? Because in real estate, if it's not in writing, it didn't happen. And that includes all this, all this stuff you're going to look for. So just because the seller says, yes, I did it, okay, you can take their word for it there. But before you sign on the dotted line for this property, they better prove it. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Okay, when are things that, like, I want you to run away? So this picture down at the bottom, this is me and my old employer Sawyer having a good old time in a heroin den. We closed down a sixplex that was being used for drive-through heroin distribution. Okay, so when are there problems that it's like, hey, they are fixable, but this is kind of just like foundation issues. This is kind of like master's level stuff that you as a one-man band investor, or say you're just getting into this. This is not the stuff to get into when you're brand new. Okay, so illegal activity, you know it when you see it. Bad neighbors. Okay, this is one to run on. You can't change the neighbors. I had this property, really nice military couple bought it, super cool fourplex, decent neighborhood, blue collar neighborhood, but the property next door was managed by one of our competitors who, let's say, they just collect rent checks. And the gal next door developed a problem with methamphetamines and would like to get high and drive her car through the fence and into the adjacent yard. Okay. I don't care how good your property manager is. I don't care how good of an investor you are. You cannot fix that. Okay. So if you notice, a good property manager is going to be around for a while and they're going to have seen rents trending in one direction or the other. If that neighborhood is just really sucking wind for some reason, a good property manager is going to know that and they should be able to tell you. So, foot stomp here, a good property manager is somebody you should be talking to during the buying process, not buying a property full of problems with an inexperienced real estate agent and then going, here you go, here's a giant mess for you to clean up. Okay, because it's going to take me a long time to unwind all that, and all that stuff costs money. If I have to go to court, I got to hire attorneys. If I have to evict people, again, we got to hire attorneys, we got to hire process servers, we got to hire all this other stuff. Okay, so am I saying that we can't solve problems? No, but problem solving always isn't free. Bad parking. I used to manage a 11-plex that had less than 11 parking spots. There was no street parking. What did that mean? That I was constantly trying to find someone who lived there who didn't own a car, but wanted to live on a busy street that was a long ways from a bus stop. Okay, that is like the kiss of death. Okay, bad parking is it seems like one of those kind of minor issues. No, it's a serious issue. If the builder got away without enough parking, that's a problem.
There was one landlord who bought a property. It was a 12-plex, and he assumed, and so did the real estate agent, assumed that where all the current tenants were parking was actually part of this property. And they didn't look at the as-built, and on the as-built, the lot is the exact same shape as a building. There was literally zero parking for this property unless they rented the next door vacant lot, and nobody disclosed that the lot wasn't theirs and that they had to rent and lease this other lot in order for their tenants to have parking. And so that created lawsuits flying everywhere, because you bought a 12-plex with zero parking. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We had another building, really cool 30-plex. It was 32 units in a bedroom community. I liked it a lot. The problem was now remember, you do not get to tell me or anyone else what the vacancy rate is. The market tells us what the vacancy rate is. And so the markets are going to ebb and flow. Employers are going to come and go. Your vacancies are going to go, vacancy is going to go up higher. And if you've got a much better property, let's say in a large apartment complex situation, if the guy next door is just a much nicer place to live, maybe he has a pool and he has a workout room and he has really nice, well-managed green areas, and yours is kind of a dump, yeah, you'll still rent yours, but it's not going to be for the same price. Or maybe, as I tell, like there's certain properties that's like, there isn't a vacancy rate, you are the vacancy rate. Like if you're the bottom of the barrel, that's how economics works. Is like people are going to go to the nicest places first if they can afford. So yeah, again, I'm going to foot stomp this over and over and over again. You make your money when you buy. Okay, what are some clues that the seller, now this is typically what you're going to see on home inspections. What are clues that the seller is hiding issues? Okay, really common in older buildings from the 50s and 60s. You'll look up in the hallway along what's called the pipe chases, and you're going to see all these patches in the ceiling. What that's an indication of is the original pipes are being literally eaten through by electrolysis. If you buy that property, you are going to spend a small fortune basically replumbing the entire building one section at a time. Look for kind of like, well, that's weird. Why is just this section repainted? Especially in ceilings, places where leaks might be common. Again, sills, stop, look, listen, smell. Is there funky smells, recent floods? Again, go in the crawl space. I know it's icky and there's spiders down there. Go in the crawl space. Bring your flashlight and your big boy pants and go in the crawl space and look around. Notice in this bottom right picture that how there's a bunch of brand new kills over some really rotten foundation wood. Okay. Suspiciously high rents for the area. Cassandra and I got called out. We were working with an investor and he says, hey, I want you to go check out this property. And it was very like blue collar, multifamily, you know, traditionally kind of ladder rack neighborhood. And we get to this property and it was like suspiciously clean. There wasn't a tin can outside. There wasn't a paper, like a candy wrapper in the parking lot. But what was there in the parking lot? A Mercedes S-Class and a BMW 7 Series. Those are six-figure cars. Why is someone who owns two six-figure German sedans living in a fourplex? Why is there nothing outside that might draw attention? I can tell you exactly who lives there. He's the local drug dealer. And guess what? He's the smart kind. He's the kind that likes to keep his head down. He probably has an attorney too. So we told him to walk on that property. Okay. You do enough of this, you get a sense of like something's off. Okay. Oh, sorry, we can't see that unit. Can that be innocent? Sure. Maybe Mabel's not doing so good. She might be going to hospice next week. I'd rather not bother her. That's completely understandable. Or it could be that that unit is absolutely destroyed and there's $20,000 in repairs and they don't want you to know about that. Okay. It's not to say to gross you out, but in really bad units, blood, urine, feces, that's kind of par for the course. And that gets expensive and difficult to get rid of because there are OSHA regulations on how the contractors have to deal with that stuff. So, you know, really, really trashed out units. I'm not talking about, oh, you need to pick up some trash and wipe the countertops. No, we're talking like blood splatter, feces, human feces. We've seen bathtubs where homeless people have broken in and, you know, it was abandoned properties or distressed properties. And they decided to use the bathtub as their way to go to the bathroom because it didn't have running water or heat. Okay. Does that mean it can't be cured? No. You need to know about it. Yes. Okay. So a little reminder. There used to be a cool radio show. I think it's still on the air on some of like the AM stations. And he was like the money guy. And he had this great phrase. He said, when are you allowed to fall in love with the property? After you've bought it. That's when you're allowed to fall in love with the property. Okay. So you see this a lot with new investors. They get all excited and look, and my spreadsheet works and I like the neighborhood. Okay, great. That's cool. You can like the property, but you don't love the property yet. You're still dating. Okay. You haven't married the property yet. So once you commit to that, once you marry that property, you are committed to paying off all her student loan debt. Okay. So you need to do your homework, slow down, stay calm. Don't let anybody, including your real estate agent, pressure you into moving too fast. Are there times when you are going to have to hustle? Yes, I've bought those. That means I hustled faster to find out the stuff I needed to know. But I'm not going to get pressured into buying a potential EPA Superfund site. Okay, almost done. Common but minor problems. This is the stuff that I want you to go, oh, okay, Eric told me about this. This is fine. I can fix this. This is newbie repellent, like we said in a previous slide. Outdated fixtures, go to Home Depot. Sockets and switches, go to Home Depot. Weird coax cables, like your hey, I want cable, but this house was built before cable, so there's coax cables all over the place. That's really common. It's fine. Popcorn ceilings, I know they're tacky. Everybody hates them. It's fine. A good drywall guy can make that go away. Sagging subfloor around toilets, kind of expensive to fix. One of the things you're going to learn to do as a real estate investor is how to hug the toilet. Now, sometimes we're hugging the toilet in the, oh my God, what did I do kind of way. Other times, what I mean by hugging the toilet is you're going to straddle the toilet, you're going to squeeze your knees in around that toilet, and you're going to give it a little bit of a shake. Now, I'm not talking about the toilet seat on the top. I'm talking about the whole body of the toilet. If that whole body of that toilet moves, especially if you happen to notice, oh, look, the floor is a little soft here. Okay. That can be a $10,000 to $14,000 repair, but it's not a reason to completely walk away from an otherwise good property. But it's something I want you to notice, and a good home inspector should notice too. Small leaks in plumbing, okay? Small leaks, okay, they can be dealt with. Small leaks that have been ignored for a very long time, that's something to pay attention to. That's mold. It's not necessarily walk away, depending on how bad it is. Smoke damage from people smoking. The house we just bought has fire damage. Guess what? That's all curable. Trash. Okay, so in this upper left-hand picture, this is from the single-family home that Cassandra and I bought. We used 2.5 of these. This is a dumpster the size of a tractor trailer, and we filled 2.5 of them with every piece of trash imaginable. I don't know who keeps Playboy magazines from the 1980s, but this guy did. VCRs. I mean, just the most odd stuff that you get in, like, especially hoarder properties. You're just going to have a whole lot of stuff that you're like, wow, didn't know anyone needed this. But that's fine. It's fine. It's easy to get rid of. It's just elbow grease. You want sweat equity, you have to sweat. All right. So I hope that kind of broke you of any sort of like, ew, but I've got the ick, right? That's okay. A little bit of ick is okay. I always joke when I'm doing these presentations in person is that you want to see your home inspector wearing a mask and giving you the thumbs up at the end of the inspection, right? Bad smells, bad paint. You want to look for what are easily and inexpensively curable issues on distressed properties. It's been sitting on the market for a long time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we're going to trust our home inspector when he says, hey, this has foundation issues. Hey, this has a serious mold issue that's progressed. And you can, just because it's distressed doesn't mean it's a good deal, but usually it does. All right, so with that, we will jump over to the Q&A. Do we have any open questions, Cassandra?
No, we have a quiet group today, actually. No.
All right.
No
well,
questions.
Cool.
Unless
no problem.
have a second to chime in the questions right now.
Easy peasy.
So
yeah,
far,
if you guys have any questions or you want clarification on anything I talked about, now would be a great time to jump in. And if not, we will go ahead and wrap this up. All right. Well, I think that's all she wrote.
Thank yous. Just got thank yous.
I love thank yous. I love thank yous. So yeah, these presentations are free. We like doing them. It's honestly a pretty rewarding part of the job. I like helping out new investors because I wish there was somebody that, more people that I could have learned from. I would have made a lot fewer mistakes on our way up the ladder. So we appreciate the thank yous. Okay, guys, with that, we will call it a night, and you all have a great evening.